Hey guys, welcome back to the Truth Performance Podcast. Today, I have the privilege of talking with my good buddy Kevin. Kevin is a dad. He's a husband. He is a athlete. He is a correctional officer. I don't know if he still is, and a teacher. And he's also a cancer survivor. And we're going to talk to him and hear a bit of his story and how he has changed his outlooks on health and wellness and really finding his own truth and finding all of that. So this is Kevin. Thanks for coming on here, man.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Of course, yeah. So why don't we start a little bit, like let's back up to like when we first met. You know, the good
Sure.
old days, like 10 years
Yeah.
ago. It probably was.
Yeah.
And
At least.
you were big into lifting, you were doing powerlifting, a little bit of CrossFit type stuff. You had your home gym in your garage. That was awesome. Like where were you at then? You were a correctional officer, you were
Yep.
just going to school to add teaching into that as well. And where were you guys at with your fitness and your health as a not only as an individual, but as a family?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, back then I was definitely into powerlifting and trying to just get big and strong. And I was working in corrections at the time, so that kind of fueled my desire and need to get bigger and stronger, just demands of the job and that type of thing. Yeah, so I was all about just trying to eat big as well at the time, like a lot of basically meat-based diet, just a ton of calories. I was kind of indiscriminate with my calories personally. Like I was just trying to eat as much as I could. But as a family, like my family's journey with health and diet and that type of thing started when my first son was born. When he was an infant, when we introduced solid food to him, he started having really bad reactions. And within the span of a couple weeks, he was hospitalized twice, just due to bad reactions to the food. And it was just your typical, I don't know, my wife would know what type you start with, but typical baby food that you start with. It was grains, and
Oh, it
he
was
was just
grains.
he was having a really bad reaction to it. So that was really our first time paying attention to what food was really, and the medical professionals said that they don't have allergies to this, so it's not the food. And then we tried a few times going back to the food, and he'd have a bad reaction back in the hospital. So
What do you mean
um,
people don't have allergies to this when it's
yeah,
grain
so
related?
it was like rice, or it's not a common thing. It's not there was not much help there, so they just said try again, and trying again brought us back to the hospital. So we reached out to a naturopath, and that kind of started us understanding what gluten was. I mean, that was 10 years ago, or actually, no, that was 14 or 15 years ago. So, that was gluten was the big talk back then. And um, yeah, it actually made a difference. Like we started going gluten free with
Removing
my
gluten
oldest.
from your guys'
Yeah,
regular diets?
yeah. And I mean, it wasn't out of our diets entirely, but because as a family, we were supporting like the foods to eat together with the kids.
Totally.
It started there, and then from that, fast forward a couple years, my wife got diagnosed with MS,
Yes.
and
This
that
is
was
something that I
our
wanted to talk about too.
yeah. It was you know came out of nowhere. Our first introduction to an autoimmune disease, and that really, coupled with our paying attention to gluten, got us really focused on nutrition, exercise as natural ways to combat an autoimmune disorder. Um, and what ended up happening is we like really went hard with the quality of foods that we were eating, and exercise, and that really, as well as me trying to like get stronger and stuff, got us really focused on exercise and health.
So
Um,
hold on. So
yeah, go ahead.
so for those who don't know exactly what, to your best knowledge and your best description, what are the symptoms of MS?
Oh yeah.
Multiple sclerosis.
So that is a question that can't be answered simply because
Okay.
it impacts every person differently. But basically, my understanding going back, also I can tell you we haven't had to think about this in a long time, and I'll get to that. But going back to when she was diagnosed, she began to get like electric shock type feelings down one side of her body. She lost sensation, numbness, and use for a few weeks of confident use of parts of her body, like her limbs and stuff. So it's pretty scary. And I mean, for some people, they can lose their sight, their bladder functioning control, like people can be paralyzed. There's a ton of different symptoms that happens, but I guess there's a breakdown in your nerves and the cell membranes, the myelin sheath, I think it's called, and just the communication between your brain and your body breaks down.
Okay.
So it's
like
a big deal.
neurodegenerative?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. But so this happened. The term multiple is that it happens over time, and you kind of get these big flare-ups, and then it kind of settles, but is a little bit worse than it was originally, and then it gets, you get a flare-up, and then it's a little bit worse the next time, and so forth. But she never got a repeat because through maybe nutrition, exercise, healthy lifestyle, and no medication. She was never put on medication. She was able to have her diagnosis changed from multiple into like a singular. So she doesn't technically have multiple sclerosis anymore. But
I didn't even know that was a thing that you would get rid of that. I thought it was kind of once you have it forever kind of thing.
Yeah, so did I. But I mean, she still has, she goes annually for MRIs, just to check if there's any additional lesions, because that's kind of a marker that they can see. But ever since that original time, back in, must have been 2012 or 2013, there's been nothing. So, it's pretty amazing.
That was wild when I first learned that, because you guys as a family are just like a unit of fitness and health. If you were to see your wife, like, she's muscular, she's active, playing soccer, running around with the kids, all that, and then find out that she has MS, and you're like, that doesn't really add up from what I knew about it anyway. So that's super cool that she was able to manage it through diet and lifestyle without medication. And then for the medication, did they offer any subscriptions or prescriptions, and then she just chose the lifestyle option?
Actually, I don't think it was needed at the beginning, but it was always kind of like this, eventually she's going to have to conversation.
Classic.
Yeah, so she just, was very determined to not get to that point. And I know that, that's not the case for everybody who encounters this, even if you do change those things. So there's probably some divine intervention, as well as her actions that led to the positive outcome. So,
was the same natural path involved in the adjustments to lifestyle as with when your kid had?
Yeah, actually, that's true. Yeah, the naturopath we used for my son back then, and as well as my wife, who was the same guy in Abbotsford. I think his name was Dr. Ewing, but he most likely retired by now. He was already kind of well in his career by then.
Yeah, I actually know a couple of people that have seen him from Mission. I mean, it makes sense.
Oh yeah,
big place.
Yeah.
Very cool. So
yes,
and I just wanted to talk about that one element. Are you still? I want to talk about corrections. Are you still in corrections?
No, I was a correctional officer from 2009 to 2019, and through that time I got my teaching degree. So in 2019 I became a full-time teacher.
Okay, because another thing that you did was you partook in jiu-jitsu. It's a craft that you picked up. And I remember like you explaining this to me, how you would get call outs because you were on a ERT team, and you would like light up telling these stories and how much you loved going in there in all the action, in your gear, and putting people into submissions. Like,
that was
what a wild time in your life.
Yeah, that was one of the most fun parts of the job for sure.
You're a crazy person.
Yeah, so it's, quite a change going from that to working in a high school, but it's all just working with people, and they're just in different places in life, right?
Yeah,
so,
one are locked up for a particular reason, and the other ones are, they're kind of locked up. They're forced to be there too, but in a different light, in a different sense.
Yeah, and I think one of the best changes for me was going from working in a prison where it was really hard for inmates to make real change in life and
Hmm.
change their patterns, change their behavior, and prevent themselves from coming back to jail. It really is a revolving door. Like, I'd see inmates say, "Hey, I'm not coming back. You won't see me again." And then you see them a couple months later, and that happens dozens of times for the same people. So it's I was really excited to switch to teaching, especially high school, where kids are like at that pivotal moment in life where they're making some serious choices about their direction, and being able to help influence positively is
Exactly, where they're
it's
actually at a
been
stage
meaningful.
where,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, exactly. You can be an influence, a positive influence on someone's life moving forward out of that stage of high school, where at that point, when they're already in that revolving door system, there's not a whole lot that you're going to say
hmm,
individually as a prison guard that is going to make a whole lot of a difference.
for sure. Yeah, it's a lot more difficult there. So yeah. So, anyways, that was kind of like that's where my family and I got really serious about nutrition mostly and exercise. Was kind of those years in my 20s and early 30s where um, there were some serious health things, and we just wanted to maximize, you know, our ability to enjoy life and to live life. So yeah, that was pretty big. But like I did mention that I put a lot of emphasis on my family's health, and I was more concerned about getting big and strong and um, just eating as many calories as I could, and a lot of protein. And there were a few things like I was pretty like being a correctional officer, being a dad, going to school. I also worked part time on weekends at a nightclub with some friends. Like we were security there, and I did a lot of stuff packed into a few years, and I was really burning the candle at both ends. Um, and those years too, I drank quite a bit. Like that was the social thing to do, and it was fun. And I think that uh, I was aware of health for my family, but ignored it for myself. And in the midst of like hyper motivation to achieve, um, my nutrition for sure and my sleep um, were really sacrificed for a number of years. Um, and that led to some like pretty big health consequences for me as well, I think.
Yes, sometimes that is the hardest thing to have. Like you can have your own advice and awareness and wisdom that you can share with others, but then to be able to turn around, put the mirror in front of yourself and listen to your own advice, I find is very difficult. I find myself in
Yeah.
this in the same position. So so you were finding yourself a little bit on the burnout end of things, and now then you got into teaching, and then
Yeah.
things changed up. And then let's fast forward to at the beginning of the episode. I mentioned that you are a cancer survivor. So
Yeah.
what, like, can you walk us through? I imagine it's a bit of a wild and emotional story, but let's dive into
Yeah,
it.
for sure. So, yeah, I had some really big positive life changes. I got out of working shift work, which I'd done for over a decade. Um, I was now on a regular sleep schedule, which was huge.
Yeah, not flip flopping from nights and days and afternoons and all that. Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah. But in the late summer, early fall of 2021, I had started developing some like lower back pain and hip pain. And I was still doing jujitsu, so I had assumed that it was just training injury, which is really common in that sport. You're always having aches and pains, and so I was going to physiotherapy a ton of times. One thing in this that time period too that was pretty like another big change was not to get pushy about it, but it is I think an important piece of my story, anyways, is that
Absolutely.
um, I started going back to church, which I hadn't
Okay.
done in over 10 years. So I had kind of pushed away any sort of spiritual life that I had once had, and put that aside for my busyness and ambition.
What was the spiritual life that you once had earlier on in life? Like, did you go
Yeah.
to church regularly with your family?
Yeah, I not with my family. Like I went in high school. I became a Christian, went to church, got married. We went to church for a few years, and then stopped participating, stopped going, stopped thinking about God at all. Um, and right in right at that time in the summer of 2021, my kids were like, "Dad, how come we don't go to church?" I was like, "Do you guys want to go to church?" And I was kind of just like, ooh, it was like kind of a gut check. Like, where have I been as a dad, like to not even give them that option until now? And they're like, around 10 years old. So I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to take them. I was just like almost embarrassed of myself for not being where I thought I should be. But I was like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a little bit of self-judgment. You look at your past, and it's so easy with what you know in any given moment to look at actions in the past and to judge yourself. It's
Yeah,
unfortunately it's human nature that's hard to get around, but it's just a
totally.
matter of being aware of it and being able to move forward and just choose the best path for yourself moving forward.
Yeah. So, from that conversation, I kind of was like, well, I'm gonna give them this chance because they want to. They're asking for it.
Really? Okay. Do you know what influenced that?
We had always taught them, like we did bedtime prayers, just like kind of a ritualistic, just tucking them in at night and prayed with them, um, and it just created curiosity in them, and they were seeking too. So, um, we took them in that summer of 2021, and I don't know, I had a self check with myself, and I just kind of said to God, I was like, I'm gonna give this a real shot too. Like if my kids are looking, I'm gonna be open to you know putting my I don't know my pride aside and just seeing what you have for me. And it was real. It was like a real moment. And that first time we took them, I just I made a big change, like in my heart, in my mind, and um, really set myself on a new path, which is there's a lot of ways you can look retrospectively at life. And I think that was maybe the biggest moment for me because coming into that fall where I started having some pain, um, I was kind of in a place where I wasn't worried. And as I, um, you know, had failing physiotherapy where it wasn't working, and then I stopped training to take some rest. Going into the new year, my pain got really bad, um, to the point where I had to start. So January of 2022, um, I was starting to limp noticeably. I was at work, could barely get up the stairs to my classroom. Um, Started walking with a cane. I'm like
Whoa.
39 years old and I'm walking with a cane because there's this pain in my back. So I saw my doctor, and um, he checked me out, but didn't really like give it too much attention because I was telling him about my sport, and he's like, it's probably just going to need some rest. You're doing physio, that's good.
Just the fact that it just kept on getting worse and worse while resting
Yeah,
it.
yes, while resting. And so I saw a chiropractor, which I had never been to. He's in Abbotsford. His name's Dr. Jonathan Hebert, and like to give him props because that first visit, explaining my pain, he checked me out like fully, like a full body check, and he felt a lump in my right glute. I couldn't feel one, like I didn't know there was anything there, but he felt a lump, and he's like, "Well, it's probably a cyst, or maybe it could be something else, but I'm gonna write a letter to your doctor to like request he get you an MRI." So I go back to my doctor, and my doctor's like, "Okay, it's gonna be like a this was January." He's like, "You probably won't get in until September for an MRI."
Oh,
And I was already like
classic.
within a few weeks went from a limp to a cane, and I was like, "Is there like a private? Can I pay for a private one?" So he's like, "Yeah." So he sent a requisition for a private MRI, and I got in within like 2 weeks, and I went to Port Coquitlam for that. And I got my results that day. I came home with a USB drive because it was private, so I paid. They gave me the results and sent it to my doctor.
It's
So I got home
amazing
that
what is possible outside of the system that
yeah,
is our Canadian healthcare, BC healthcare system. It's painful. I've had my own experience. Nothing as life changing as you, but regardless, like just
Oh, for sure.
a
Yeah.
failure of the system nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah, so I got home that night. It was a Friday. Plugged in this USB. I was looking at these MRI images that I had no idea how to understand, but I could see like the spot that my chiropractor said there was a thing, like a lump. I could see like a little circle on the image. I'm like, okay. Um, Monday comes around and my doctor calls me and got the report from the radiologist. I think that's who kind of goes through those. And it basically said indications of sarcoma. I didn't know what that word was at the time. It didn't say cancer. I just said some words, sarcoma. So I was like, okay. My doctor called and he told me that that was probably the best $1,000 I've ever spent in my life.
Getting so
He's real.
that's what your MRI cost, $1,000.
Yeah, out of
That's not
pocket.
that's not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. To be
No,
honest.
no, yeah. Just because it was one location, I think. If they had to scan another spot, then it doubles and so forth. But um, my doctor basically said sorry, and he kind of explained what sarcoma was to me. And I was home by myself when I got that phone call, and it was man, devastating moment. It's not news you're ever expecting. Even though I was going through pain and felt like something was wrong, I thought I've had pain before and it was tendonitis or things like that. So to get a phone call from your doctor and have that be the news, it was like, I don't know. It was a bomb. Like it was huge. So
Hmm.
going from that, I don't know where you want me to take the story. Just keep rolling.
Yeah, keep rolling,
Yeah.
man. Keep
Okay.
rolling.
From that, it felt like forever between updates on what was next. Like he referred me to the BC Cancer Agency out in Vancouver, and so now it's out of my family doctor's hands and into BC Cancer. So I'm waiting for whoever. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of oncologists that work for BC Cancer, so I don't know who it's going to. But in the meantime, I was now going from a cane to a walker. The pain got so bad that I could barely walk. We moved a bed down to the main floor in the house. I think that's when you came to visit me.
Yeah.
I had a mattress on the floor in my living room just so I could be around the family, but the couch was too uncomfortable, so I just had a bed in the living room right in the middle of the house and then a walker to get me to the bathroom. Um, I finally got contacted by BC Cancer, and then it was a slow process because they were trying to figure out what kind of treatment they wanted to give me. They knew that the now tumor was a sarcoma type of cancer, but there's a bunch of different subcategories. So they wanted to do a biopsy to see what kind it was to determine what kind of treatment. Um, Surgery was going to be inevitable, but they didn't know the timing.
The timing or how much and what needed to be removed exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So their first step was to do a biopsy and then go from there. So um, in retrospect, I wish they would have just done surgery to remove it at that point before a biopsy, because they could determine what kind of tumor it was once it was removed also. But instead, what a biopsy does is it goes in and pokes a hole or snips out a piece of your tumor.
Hmm.
And the tumor itself is enclosed. It's like it's in a sac, sort of, if that's a way to explain it.
Yeah. 'Cause
So
I mean, yeah, because I've seen this rabbit hole before, where it's talking about biopsies and what biopsies are actually doing and how they're kind of counterintuitive in a sense. And yeah, I mean, tumors are your body's way of protecting itself from whatever this substance is in your body, these cells. It tries to contain it away from your vital organs. That's why it has the membrane and keeps it somewhere. And in this case, it was in your glute, just to keep it away from your vital organs. Like, who knows where it could have gone without that tumor. So that tumor's saving you, and now they want to cut it open.
yeah, and at the time, I didn't know anything about any of this. I was just like, okay, I'm going along with what everybody says. I didn't research it. Apart from one time I looked up, I'll get to that. But so they did a biopsy. They determined that it was this mutation of a sarcoma called a CIC rearranged sarcoma, which is a very unresearched, untreated type of cancer. It's similar to one that's called a Ewing sarcoma, which is a pretty common one, which is a tumor that takes place in soft tissue, muscle, or bone. I think that's what Terry Fox had, a type of sarcoma, which ended up having his leg removed. So my type was similar to that, but there was no real treatment other than surgery that was guaranteed to remove something. The chemotherapy was like the next thing on the list, but that wasn't. It was just kind of a hope. It was palliative. It wasn't curative. So it was to try to give you a bit longer life. That was what I was walking into with this.
Chemo in the hopes of a better palliative life.
Of prolonging my life, not curing it, because the small amount of studies of the type of cancer and chemo didn't prove any type of chemo to be curative. So going into that, my biopsy showed what type it was, and then I had a CT scan that showed it had metastasized to my lungs. So that means it had spread from my glute up to my lungs, which with this type of cancer, that is like one of the first spots it likes to go. It gets to your organs, lungs primarily.
Now, did it spread because of the biopsy, or was that already spread before they cut it open?
That's a great question. That's impossible to tell because I didn't have a CT scan before the biopsy. But yeah, going back, I would have probably pushed harder to have a biopsy done after it was removed and not before, because there is a chance, I think, that it could have spread due to it being opened. Like those cells are now out in your body, and but there's no way to tell at this point. Like,
Fair.
But it does. This type of cancer does start in limbs, often in tumors like that, and does like to spread to the lungs, to organs, which is what happened in my case. And there were spots all over my lungs, and those spots were inoperable as well. To get them out, they would have to remove too much lung tissue. So the only option I had was chemo, which they said might work, which was that was a tough one too. Like every time I was getting news early in 2022, it was worse.
Yeah, it was worse, and then we don't really know. It's uncertain what the outcome of what our possible solution is.
Yeah, and to go back a little bit, remember, like I was saying, that it felt like everything was taking forever.
Mm-hmm.
Between the end of January, when I was finally diagnosed, getting a biopsy, a CT scan, that all took place between the end of January and the end of March. So it was months of just kind of sitting and waiting and watching in pain, and actually like physically watching the size of my glute get bigger and bigger on my right side.
Oh my God. And definitely not from using the muscle, because you at this point you pretty much weren't.
No, it was huge. It was like literally like whoosh, out on one side. But once they determined that it had spread to the lungs, they got me on an emergency surgery list. And I was in within a week from that for surgery.
Wow.
And they removed the tumor and the entire glute max muscle on my right leg. They say like that their terminology is to like get some of the margins. So just in case there was a bit of spread. Mm-hmm. So they basically scooped out my whole glute max. And yeah, they needed to do it as fast as possible so that I could heal as fast as possible so I could start chemo. Because once you're on chemo, you're not healing.
Yes, that completely kills your entire immune system.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had surgery. I actually bounced back pretty quick. I started walking really quick. I kind of turned a page. Like that waiting period was the worst time for me. Like just trying to stay focused mentally and, not spiral you know,
I could only imagine how
with
difficult it is
sadness
to.
or, but to like kind of, my priority was to still be there for my family. Like there's some terrible news here. I might not be around much longer. So, like those are some of the feelings and like realities going through my head.
Yeah.
So I worked really hard to physically get back to living again because I'd been lying on a mattress in my living room for, at this point, a couple months. But once surgery had finished, I was up moving around. By May, I had gone back and lightly tried jujitsu again. Like this is like a month and a half later. So I was out doing stuff. And a friend of mine at the time, I know him through church. He said that his wife had battled cancer years back, and she survived. She was seeing a naturopath at this place in Port Moody. Her name is Dr. Chen at Advanced Healing Arts, and she specifically works with people with cancer. So I was like, okay, I'm at a point where I don't want to just be told what to do. I by the medical side, I want to look at every possible way to get through this.
Yeah, make informed choices.
Yeah. And so I went and met with her, and because I was already scheduled for chemo, and I was pretty committed to doing it at the time, she wanted to support my my body throughout chemo. So she didn't want to interfere with chemo in her treatments, but she wanted to support my body's ability to heal and cope with chemo because, it breaks you fully down.
It does. Yeah.
So I started seeing her in between my rounds of chemo. I did like high dose vitamin C, the mistletoe treatments. There's a bunch of these like naturopathic ways to support your body's like recovery and everything through it. And it was amazing. Like it really, I mean, I don't have something to compare it to, but
that's the hardest part about going through any mechanism of making yourself better that isn't a prescribed drug is people want to see, well, how much did it help you? It's like, well,
yeah,
there's only one of me, and I can't compare myself if I got sick and took this natural remedy. Like there's nothing to compare. You can't compare it to. So it's so hard to be able to prove these things, but yet all you have is your testimony and your word and how you felt through that whole process.
Totally. So, I mean, it was an intensive like regimen of chemo. I did starting on a Monday, we would count every 3 Mondays, and that's when I would start my next round. And there were 2 types. On one round of chemo, I would have a single day of chemo. And then on the next round, I would have 5 days in a row of chemo. And they were totally different. My body's response was different. One thing, I lost all my hair. My hair up top was already pretty gone, but the beard was falling out, so I just got rid of it. I lost my eyelashes, my eyebrows. It was like fully all gone.
Body hair as well?
Yep, everything. I lost a ton of weight. I went down 50 pounds. I was almost 200 pounds, went down to just under 150. Got really, really skinny. And then the nausea was real. Like it was, it took me a couple of rounds to kind of figure out how to beat the nausea, but I was definitely on a ton of pharmaceuticals, to support me getting through it. Like there was no way around it. If I didn't take, anti-nausea medication and all this kind of stuff, it would have been super, super difficult. Like the first 2 rounds of chemo that I did not manage my nausea, and it leveled me for like over a week each time. And really bad. Oh yeah, there's so much to this part of the story that, my very first week of chemo, I had to stay as an inpatient in Surrey Memorial Hospital. So I had to stay there for a whole week. I had already been in the hospital after surgery for a week. And
that's the last place you want to spend time.
I don't want to spend any more time away from my family at this point than I have to.
Yeah.
They came out like every day to see me in Surrey and Vancouver General Hospital. from Mission, which is over an hour. And it just, I mean, it's going to be a toll on them too. So I was pretty motivated to not be there. The wing that they had me in for my first round of chemo was the palliative care wing in the cancer center. I met this amazing lady in her late 70s, early 80s named Ruth, who passed away beside me on my like second night there. We had really good conversations. That was a really hard moment. And I'm like lying in this place that I don't know. It was not a good place.
Yeah, why were you in palliative?
So because I needed to be monitored, there was this type of drug that I was getting in this round of chemo called Mesna. It was administered through IV, and it's a recovery drug. So it kind of saves me from the chemo they're giving me. And it has to be given intravenously under supervision. But my doctor, he had mentioned that there was an oral version, but they never give it to people because it is so gross that people can't swallow it. Like they can't keep it down. They throw it up. And it's expensive, and you have to have it. Like you have to keep it in your body because otherwise the chemo, like you'll probably die from that chemo. But since I was there for a week, and I was highly motivated to get home to my family, I was like, can I try this oral version? So I don't have to be in the hospital for the next 6 months every time I do chemo. Mm-hmm. So they actually let me try it. It was, oh man, like the worst thing, like the smell of it was like raw sewage. The taste was even worse. It was, I don't know, it was horrible. But I was like, I need to do this. So I did it. I kept it down. I proved to them that I could do it.
So that was basically your ticket out was to be able to self-administer and drink this drink that is going to protect your body from basically succumbing to the chemotherapy, which is trying to save you from the cancer in your lungs.
Yeah, and I had to do it every day that so I go in, drive into the hospital, and do my chemo, and then come home, and then have to take it at a certain time each day for 5 days in a row on my own. By the end of my chemo, I couldn't even look at. It was in like this big syringe you'd pour it into a glass. I couldn't even look at it without like dry heaving physically and like the threat of throwing up. So I'd have to get my wife to pour it into a glass and put it on the counter. I'd be out of the room. If I caught a whiff of it, I would throw up. And this is real. And then we got a can of like cream soda Zevia and put that on the counter as a chaser. And I'd literally like breathe in from another room, hold my breath, run up to it without looking, get guided to it, slam a chaser. And then that wasn't even enough to get the taste out of my mouth. I had a pile of gum, and I'd stick gum in my mouth. Like that's how I got through it. It was wild.
We're talking mint, or are we talking like a double bubble?
It was bubblegum flavor, yeah. I needed like a really strong flavor to get over this stuff.
Yeah, true enough. Wow.
But that kept me home. And then I was home to put my kids to bed each night, and that was
and you mentioned when I came to visit you, and it was so strange because you had mentioned that you had some news and some changes, and I had a feeling it was something along those lines. And yeah, it was where you had the walker and you had the bed in the living room, and I came to visit you. And for some reason, like I remember I told you this back then, but like there wasn't really even a sense of like that there was an option that you weren't going to make it through there. It's like, oh, Kevin has this. Oh, that's tough, but Kevin's a beast. Kevin will be just fine. Like I didn't worry about you, which is a strange thing because when most people get a diagnosis like that, it's just heart sinking, and as much as it is it's difficult to hear and difficult to understand what it is that you're going through, like I didn't worry about you, which is a strange thing, but I mean, hey, it all worked out.
Yeah. A couple things that I was going to mention. When I was going to see Dr. Chen, her treatment room had a bunch of chairs, kind of like a chemo room in a hospital, there's like chairs and like there's other patients there. And so I sit there and I was getting like some vitamins intravenously through drips. So you're there for an hour, hour and a half. And I met some really cool people that were also going through their own cancer journeys, and everyone a bit different, but there were a couple things that I mean, people who are seeking out naturopathic support are a little bit like-minded. They're looking for ways that are more natural, or from a longevity point of view anyways, of getting through this. And I was recommended this book called Radical Remission. It's by Kelly A. Turner. This book is so cool because it's not prescribing any treatment. It's just a compilation of stories from different people who've had different types of cancer, who've done different things to radically change their lifestyle and overcome their cancer. And the common theme behind it was stuff that's applicable to everybody. It's like sleep, nutrition, exercise, being outside, morning sunlight, like all of these things that I hadn't really learned about until I was going through this, but they're things that we've implemented with my whole family. And it's like, you know, there's this guy, one of the stories that I can remember offhand is this guy from Japan. He refused chemotherapy for his cancer, and he just wanted to live as good as he could for whatever time. And his thing was he would get up before the sunrise every morning, go outside, and he was going outside about a half an hour before the sun rose, right when the birds would start waking up and chirping. And the book kind of goes into what's behind that, is that this is bizarre, but like birds start chirping before the sun's coming up. So they're like waking up, they're active, which is an indication, or it was explained in the book, that that's when trees start to produce more oxygen.
Interesting.
So there's this big burst of oxygen coming out. So this guy is sitting outside getting really fresh oxygen from the trees near his house, and he's getting first light from the sun. So his like circadian rhythm is getting started properly, like just everything kind of is
as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got this book while I was there. I also got into water filtration. We were talking earlier about like we have a Berkey water filter, and you know, getting a lot of the chemicals, the chlorine, I don't know, some of the metals, whatever's in our city water out. I know there's better, like you have a pretty good system at your place.
No, so I don't have a robust filtration system, especially because I bounce around so much living in Mexico. I run my water through hydrogen generating bottles, and I have one that's in particularly, like, I've been diving deep down this rabbit hole, and I can explain it to you a little bit later.
Yeah.
It can even be on the recording. Just I don't want to get too sidetracked from this conversation about the book and all these natural remedies and getting people rejuvenating their bodies through what is given to us on this earth, right? It's all there, and it's all free. You just have to choose to incorporate it into your life to use it to its benefit for your body.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought there was more. Yeah. So the book has a ton of cool stories, and it was really encouraging to get through it because there were just many ways that people healed. And so I was looking at my own life, where I was at, and I just started incorporating as many things as I could. Like, I was seeing a naturopath for extra vitamin support and immuno support, you know, really focusing on sleep, getting blackout curtains for a room, getting cell phones out of like our bedroom near our pillows, you know, like all these little things, like EMFs. You know, that's a huge thing that I didn't really pay attention to. The thing that I look back at now is that I have made massive changes in life, but I didn't make them all at once. And I think that's important for people to kind of like look at, is it can seem overwhelming. So like a lot of people just give up. It's like, oh, there's too much. I'm comfortable. I'm just going to not try. But when you just kind of tackle one area at a time, and make it practice and routine, then it's easy to add another one.
Yeah.
And um,
There's
you know,
actually a neurological element called the rule of threes, where your nervous system can only handle so much change at a given time, and the magic threshold is 3 new habits to implement into your life. And if you can stick consistent with those 3 habits, but you try to implement more than that, and your body or your nervous system is going to naturally go back to what is considered safe, what it knows, what's familiar to it, which isn't necessarily what you know to be the best thing for you, but you now neurologically you're not in a position where you want to choose that anymore. You're wanting to choose what is safe. So I mean, I deal with that all the time because that's what I'm doing now is performance coaching, and literally a big part of it is implementation, because unfortunately people can't just take all this information, that whether they know the information or they have the awareness and they know right from wrong, good from bad, whatever it may be for them, but it's a whole other ball game to actually implement those into your life, to actually make lifestyle changes and not just be on a diet or not just be doing a program or trying this out. Like, no, these are proven things to work. So how is it going to work in your life, and how can we actually make those habits? So every single thing that you're talking about are all things that are focuses that we work on, like sleep and energy, and protecting our bodies from sources that are not natural to it, right? Because so your body can actually do what it's meant to do, return it as close to a state of homeostasis, so it can process things, so it can clean itself out, it can heal itself the way it's supposed to, without being bombarded with EMFs and different rays of light during wrong hours, which messes with your circadian rhythm, which messes with your sleep, which messes with your immune system, and it's just all joined in. So like, as much as that's taken into a biohacking kind of spectrum of activities and practices, but at the same time, spiritual people are also taking, like, new age spirituality is kind of taking biohacking things and incorporating into their own practices and saying it's for their spiritual health, because it's just all connected. So I love that you're doing all these things, and really one at a time looking into how can I improve this micro area of my life and my being, and do it for my whole family.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a cool journey. So, going back to my chemo treatment, I was getting support with a naturopath, and I was implementing some of these, different things I was learning from this book. My sister-in-law sent me this book that her aunt, who unfortunately passed away from her battle, but her aunt was using this book, is called Beat Cancer Daily. It was just a book full of daily Bible scripture references or prayers or meditations from an author named Chris Wark. And so I just started implementing like more intentional daily spiritual practice in my life too, which to me, it was already part of my life. I was just making it more intentional and more focused. But even going back to that Radical Remission book, like, some of the people in there were doing the same thing, not in a Christian perspective, but in their own spiritual way.
Exactly. I think it doesn't really matter which vehicle you use to get down the highway, as long as you're going down the highway with intention, in which the intention, as much as it may, like I say, have a different vehicle or a slightly different verbiage, the way you may go about it, it's all the same intention. It's all driving towards the same place.
Yeah, it's taking that I don't know, a part of yourself to slow life down and to focus, and for me to pray and connect with God has been like probably the key point of strength that I've had through this, because without that, like, in the past, my reactions to big stressors in life weren't controlled. I'd get angry or panicked or whatever, but like throughout this, minus the initial diagnosis, which was a pretty big thing, like, I've been relatively at peace and kind of not stressed out or worried like throughout this whole thing. Even in the midst of, having stage 4 cancer with like I said, I looked it up once. It was like a 1 to 5 year survival rate. I'm like, oh, sweet.
So not even like a percentage of survival, but a 1 to 5 year expectancy.
There is a percentage in there. I don't remember it, but
so like a large percentile makes it 1 to 5
almost
years.
Everyone, yeah. So
way to beat the odds.
Yeah, but I mean, technically, I'm still in the middle of those years. Like, I'm not at 5 years yet. But that's not even something I think about, really.
No.
Like, yeah. So, anyways, incorporating that. But then this guy, Chris Wark, who I got this book from, I found out he has this program called Square One. His Instagram handle is Chris Beat Cancer. And so I started following him, and we tried to implement a little bit of it while I was doing chemo, and it was basically this 90-day hardcore vegetarian approach to just basically overload your body with anti-cancer foods. And it seemed like a cool thing. Mind you, I'm coming from a place where I used to have an Instagram account that was a carnivore page.
Yeah.
With like 3,000 followers, and like I was like full on board with meat only and loving it.
Was your meat only, like, when was that chronologically here within your story?
Pre-cancer.
Pre-cancer.
At least a year.
Okay.
Yeah. I was still eating a lot of meat, but I wasn't carnivore only for at least a year. And really, when I was carnivore only, it was not 100% of the time. It was most of the time. And
more or less experimental and feeling things out and using it as what it is. 'Cause I feel like as much as some people do last long time and long term on carnivore diet, every body is different, and every body is going to react differently and have different I guess just reactions to what you put in it. So, just like how someone like Paul Saladino, he started as carnivore, and then he found he was having some issues, so he added fruits and honey and things back into his diet. Yeah. So a lot of people are using it more so as a elimination diet to get rid of inflammatory markers. For sure. Yeah. And I approached it as experimental. I was like, I'm curious about this. Totally. I did it for a while, but so going back to Square One, it was like a complete different approach to nutrition, but it had a specific purpose in overloading your body with, not overloading, but like just inviting in a ton of anti-cancer foods, which he has Chris Wark has a podcast, he has books, he has there's a ton of information and a lot of scientific research about all of these things that he's talking about. It's not just it's not anecdotal. It's not, an ideology. His goal is for himself, and then also for people that follow him. His goal is to help you, to beat cancer. So, we tried it a bit, but during chemo, I found it really hard to eat that way. I just kind of stuck to whole foods, as natural as I could, organic when I could, and I felt like I still needed some protein for energy. So I kind of put that on the shelf while I was in chemo. Anyways, I'm kind of stuck in this time period for a while here, but by November of 2022, I had been on chemotherapy for 6 months, and it had shrunk some of the spots in my lungs to millimeters, but my body, the cancer, stopped responding to the chemo. So it was no longer working. And basically, my oncologist, he said, there's no point in continuing chemo right now because it's just going to keep harming your body and it's not shrinking the cancer. So we're going to give you a break. We're going to stop chemo and hope that through monitoring, if your cancer starts to grow or spread again, because it was still there in half a dozen spots on my lungs, still at this point. The hope is with this big break that maybe it will respond again to the chemo. We don't have a different type of chemo for you to trick it and give some variety. It's just, this is the type. So November of 2022, I stopped chemo, and it was kind of like
well, let's wait till this gets bad again. So that's where I was at in life with my cancer and with my health. But I was excited to be done chemo
No
and
kidding.
to be able to start at least getting healthy, like in the ways of like, gaining some muscle back and energy and growing my beard back and, you
Most
know,
important.
getting back to life.
Yeah.
So I just kept on implementing these things and growing in different areas of health and learning and that type of thing. At that point, probably February of 23, I started the Chris Warwick Square One program. So I went for at least the 90 days. Maybe it was a little bit later in spring that I started it, but basically the program was juicing daily. So I'd get 5 pounds of carrots and a bunch of beets and turmeric and
Nice.
celery and garlic, and I would juice it and be drinking like 16 to 32 ounces daily every day of all this juice. And then on top of that, he talks about having two big salads, and these big salads are like big salads. It's like, I don't know, if you were to sit there and try to eat it, like your bowl would be just like massive with like red onions and um, tomatoes and kale and arugula, like just basically anything you can think of, nuts, seeds, just all this stuff. And I was finding it really, really hard to eat that much salad. Like it would take me forever to chew through this stuff. So I modified it a bit. I don't know if you would approve, like Chris, but I started blending it in my Vitamix. So I started taking these twice a day, these big salads, like massive, throwing it all in my Vitamix, blending it up, and then just slamming it back. I could do it in like 4 minutes as opposed to sitting there for like 40 minutes with a salad.
I mean, because if you're blending it and not juicing it, you're still getting all the fiber. It's broken down differently, but
Yeah.
would it not still be more or
So
less the same?
yeah, I think the argument is that you're like chewing starts your digestive process.
Hmm.
So what I would do is while I was blending it, I'd take a handful of nuts and start chewing those, and then still juice it to try to modify it for myself a bit.
The-
But this is just saying like there's so many different ways to try to choose a healthy lifestyle, and you can make it work for you, I think. So I did that all through the summer. We have a trailer and we camped. We went down to Florida, my family from like BC. So it was like a three week plus road trip, and I brought my Vitamix and I actually pre-made juice and froze it all. So we had this cooler full of frozen juice. Like I legit was like on board serious with this thing.
That's so cool.
During this time being off chemo, I was still getting every 2 months a CT scan. So like January and March and, every 2 months. Around our summer travel, I had to make sure I was home for CT scans. Up until July was my last CT scan of that spring, summer. I still had spots showing in my lungs, but nothing was getting worse. So they called it stable, but I was still had cancer. And right around, I think it was August. No, it was in July. I found out about Dr. Ober. Is that his name? The earthing doctor, the earthing
Okay,
guy.
I'm not familiar with them, but I'm definitely familiar with the practice of earthing and grounding.
Yeah, so I watched his movie. It was like Earthing, or, I don't know, earthing.com or anyways, he had this movie on earthing, and he developed this earthing mat to go on your bed.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh man, that's so interesting. Like talking about like the voltage charge in your body that's like super high, and like preventing your body from reducing inflammation and stuff. There's just a ton of health benefits to being connected to the earth, to grounding. So my wife, actually, she had already bought this pair of sandals called, oh shoot, Field Grounds? No,
Yeah, that
Earth
have.
Runners, Earth Runners.
Okay,
And they have
okay.
a copper plug in them so that and then
Ah,
there's like through the straps, there's like metal. So you can be wearing those outside. and be grounding, or just obviously bare feet in the grass or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
then we got this thing for our bed. It showed up in the mail in July, and so all of a sudden now, for my 8 hours sleep a night, I'm grounded. Like it's plugged into the wall in the ground, which goes through your house into the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like all over. I'm reducing my charge. July I had a CT scan that showed cancer. The only change that I made between that CT scan and my next one at the end of September was I got that earthing mat. Like I was still doing all the healthy things. I was doing square one, all the vegetables and stuff. My other healthy practices, exercise, sleep, all that kind of stuff. But from July, I got an earthing mat. September, I had a CT scan, and literally I don't know, it's October 2nd, probably October 2nd, 3rd last year, I got the results from that CT scan in September, and they said, you have no more cancer. There's no evidence of disease.
Wow.
So that I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting another, it's still there, but stable.
Yeah. And I mean,
Always like a little worried that maybe it's going to have grown now, because it had been now getting close to a year since I stopped chemo.
mm-hmm.
So totally gone. It's still gone to this day. Like I still have CT scans every 2 or 3 months. And I think they're going to get spread further apart. There's a lot of radiation in a CT scan. I don't know if you are aware of that, but a CT scan, I think it's in the top 10 causes of cancer in the US. A CT scan is number, medical imaging is number 6. Causes like 3% of cancers. So it's kind of like, it's a tool that they have to check you. That's one of the best options right now. But it's really high in radiation, more than an X-ray. Ideally, MRIs, they're magnetic based, so they're better for you. But so I'm hoping that that's one area I'm still receiving a lot of radiation is when I get my CT scans, but I kind of need to.
So for the people that don't fully understand the mechanism and what you're doing when you're grounding, same idea with the EMS. How can you best describe it for people of what it's actually doing?
Your body carries a charge, an electric voltage charge. I can't remember what average range it is. If you're not earthing, it's like 8 volts or something. I'm making up numbers here. There's a bit of a charge, and when you are connected to the earth, that charge goes down to almost zero because it has an escape.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at animals that are in nature, or that's a good example. They're always connected to the earth. They're always touching ground, and there's like virtually no cancer found naturally in animals.
Diseases.
No autoimmune diseases in animals that are in nature, because one of the theories is that because they are consistently grounding, so they don't have that buildup of charge preventing inflammation to reduce. Mm-hmm. When you see cancer in animals, like dogs, for example, they're indoor pets. They're not touching the ground. They're not outside in nature. Maybe part of their day is, but they're inside just like we are. This earthing movie I'd recommend people watch talks about how the invention of rubber-soled shoes in the 40s or 50s or something also coincided with a huge rise in cancer in humans. So, I mean, these are all speculations, but there's some correlation for sure.
Absolutely.
So it's just another area that if I can improve in that area, I don't care what the studies are saying. Like, it's going to make me healthier, even if it's a small amount. Mm-hmm. But you start adding all these small amounts in different areas together, and you're going to see huge health benefits. So in
the last couple of years, you've dove down some pretty fierce rabbit holes on health and longevity and just overall wellness.
Yeah. In part, I mean, I'd say my hand was forced into it. Like I don't think I would be in this place with all these things if I hadn't had to. But now that I am here and I no longer have cancer, I'm not going back. Like, I feel really good. Mm-hmm. My family is healthier. Like, we're all just all healthier and able to do things together. You know, we're going on adventures, we're traveling, snowboarding, jujitsu together, my kids and I, like all these things. If we, you know, all of a sudden gave up all these healthy practices and played more video games and went back to eating Doritos, and, you know, all of those health problems or different ones are going to creep back in, or just the lethargic feeling of not wanting to do anything, you know, like I can remember like when I was eating as many calories as I did, yeah, I was lifting weights, but I wasn't really doing anything else. I'd lift weights and then pound in some calories to get bigger.
Yeah.
And
your
then
body's just putting so much energy towards digestion that's just slowing you down in every other way.
Totally. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, here I am now, like, you know, I have dinner and then I put on my blue light blocking glasses.
Heck
and,
yeah.
you know, I'm really protective of my health now. And being a year out from having cancer, there's been times or moments where, like, you know, laziness has crept back in a little bit here and there, but like you can catch it and you can see, like, I can feel the difference when, you know, I went to McDonald's, you know, like, oh my goodness, my digestion was shot for days, or I was grumpy. Like one little turn back in an area that's now a healthy practice, and if I don't put on if I'm on my phone before bed, I have a terrible sleep. Like once you develop a healthy practice and it's your consistent or your norm, when these other areas that used to be normal, you know, you have a one-off thing like that, you can tell, you know?
Yep. 100%. Yeah. It's like that. Like it almost raises your sensitivity to it. Maybe because all these other healthy practices you're doing is actually heightening your awareness. But like, have you recently gone through like a major, like Superstore or Save on Foods and gone down like the detergent aisle?
I was just thinking about this too, but we hadn't touched on that. It's awful. Yeah. Fragrances.
I can't. Well, yeah, there's that in itself, fragrances, and going down the estrogenics.
Yeah, detergent aisle too, yeah.
Yeah, so like I can't, man. Like the smell of it is so overwhelming and so like just punches me in the face. I can't do it. I can't even go down those aisles. It just hurts. And same thing with like seed oils, for example. I stay away from seed oils as much as possible. And people can pull up a double-blind placebo trial where it shows it improves health markers. I don't give a shit. I worked on a refinery where they were building, or sorry, it was a crushing plant for canola, and we were building the refinery. And so I got to see the process that this little seed goes to get to a bottle of trash that lives in people's cabinets. And it is not meant to be in human bodies. It is putrid. And I do not need people to show me a study to try to prove me that I'm wrong for avoiding those foods. Like I just stick to things that are closer to nature. So when I do go out and have foods, like a lot of the local taco stands and stuff here in Mexico, like everything, like from the tortilla to if they're frying up vegetables or frying up the meat, they're all using the cheapest, most abundant canola oil there is. And I feel it. I feel it in my system just clogging me up, and like my digestion is different, and like, yeah, I just feel a little bit foggier, and especially since the whole time I've been down in Mexico, I've been battling a little bit of midday brain fog, and I'm just starting to get a handle on that now. But yeah, like I definitely notice you become much more sensitive to all those types of things. And the further you go into each one of these individual rabbit holes and you come out on the other side with heightened awareness and feeling better and noticing other things that are able to do the same, like I don't think you really can go back. And that's part of making lifestyle habits. You're like, okay, well, I'm not going to be part of this system. I don't want to be dependent on whether it be the healthcare system and eating the food that they want me to eat, that they're telling me according to a study is good, when I know I can just ask my body, is this good for me? Do I want this? Yes or no? It'll tell you. You just have to be able to get more in tune with it, right? So like it's not about making these big changes and, you know, having to do these hard tasks. Is once you understand how it all comes about, and you just don't want to choose that. So it's just so much easier to make that a lifestyle and stick to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, on that note too, like when I used to ask my wife to buy Bounce dryer sheets. So I was like, oh, I like how it smells. But now, like if I smell it on any clothes, like I'm just like, oh my goodness, that is so strong.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah. So one thing we talking about was the Cops Are Cancer ride that I got to do this year.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Tell
So
me about that.
and I'll link it to some laundry after too, but it's just
Yeah.
kind of funny. But yeah, so the year that I got sick, a friend of mine, he's a police officer. He joined the Cops for Cancer ride, and what the Cops for Cancer organization is and is all about. It's through the Canadian Cancer Society, and its primary focus is to raise money to support kids that have cancer and their families. So one of the things that I have, even pre-cancer, had kind of struggled with personally was organizations that fundraise for cancer or for whatever else. And all this money gets eaten up in bureaucracy and goes to research,
Yeah.
but it's fueling the pharmaceutical industry. And without getting too much into that rabbit trail, but I don't necessarily support mainstream medicine. I think there's a purpose, but we'll move on from that. What really excited me about the Canadian Cancer Society's Cops for Cancer was that it was a tangible donation. Like there's a camp called Camp Good Times, which they're fundraising money for. Is this camp is basically a summer camp designed for kids or siblings of kids that have cancer. And there's medical staff, there's a ton of paid workers, volunteers, and it's just a place that kids get to go to feel normal again and get to be kids. Like I remember I explained kind of what I went through, like being in the hospital, the wing I was staying in, all that kind of stuff. There's kids doing the exact same thing. I'm like a grown man. I, should be tougher to go through that than a child. And I know how hard that was for me. And I know that kids are doing this. And I know that their parents are, one parent's going to have to work extra and one parent is going to have to quit their job and sit in the hospital. And their other kids are getting neglected because the one kid is sick. And like, it is such a strain and a toll on a family. And I was so glad to hear that there was this Cops for Cancer bike tour, that the money goes, every $2,000 sends a kid and their family to camp. And I was like, I talked to my buddy and I said, if I'm healthy again next year, as a former correctional officer, can I do this? And so he looked into it and he's like, yeah, you could join if you're healthy. It ended up taking me 2 years. But I was able to join this year, and man, the experience was amazing. Like, not only was I able to raise enough personally to send 5 kids and families to camp, but it was also like kind of a personal accomplishment. Like, yeah, I started doing jiu-jitsu again, but I was never into cycling. I was never a runner. I was never into any of that. I hadn't really weightlifted again, like since I had cancer. But I was like, there's this goal that I can do that's going to actually help people. And it's also going to push my limits and push where I'm at too. And kind of be like this achievement coming out of my own cancer journey, to be able to do this for myself and for other people. So I started training in January of this year, and the ride it takes place over 8 days, and it's approximately 100 kilometers of cycling per day, 8 days in a row.
I know you were posting your Strava screenshot
Yeah.
every day of the bike race on your Instagram, and every day I'm like, another day of 100 kilometers.
Yeah.
How like
It's crazy.
oh
So, I mean, going back to January, one of the first rides I went on by myself, I did like a 15 to 20 kilometer bike ride, which was a lot for me. I'd never been a cyclist. Like that was a hard ride, and I live in a town that's got a ton of hills. You know, you grew up in the same town,
yeah.
and my house is at the top of the city, and so to do a ride, I have to go down, and at the end of my ride, I have to come back up this hill, and I had to get off my bike and walk up the hill. That was my first day riding. I was like, how am I going to do this? So, pardon me, I took training seriously. I was riding all year, 1 to 2 to 3 rides a week, and increasing the distances and lengths of time on the bike. And I was able to do the tour like no problem. I was sore in the ways that everyone else was sore. You know, you're sitting on a bike seat, but yeah, I started an Instagram account. Actually, I changed the name from my old carnivore page, and rebranded myself to be like a cancer survivor account, but specifically to raise funds for the Cops for Cancer. That's what the intention was. So I was posting my rides, my workouts, all that kind of stuff.
And what is that handle?
Well, since I had my glute removed from my tumor, I called it Half-Assed Fitness. I thought it was pretty fun.
I told my wife that yesterday, and she died laughing. Her
Awesome.
jaw just dropped.
Yeah,
it's so funny and very very you at the same time.
Yeah,
to take something like that and spin it into something awesome, and then drive it towards such a cool cause as well.
Yeah. So I'm gonna, for now, I'm keeping it up as just like kind of documenting my personal journey. The bike tour ended a week and a half or 2 weeks ago now. And since then, I've been back to jiu-jitsu. I kind of put a pause on that near the end because I didn't want to be injured for the bike tour.
Yeah.
Just in case.
How was your body at the end of like every individual day, but like you're done 8 days of riding, 800 kilometers. Like what does your body feel like after doing that?
My quads were really, really tight, like beyond, like more than I've ever experienced in my life. So I did, after each day of riding, I foam rolled. I had some what's it called? I have this muscle cream it's kind of like an icy hot thing, but it's a natural product from this little boutique store in Lumby, BC, like near Vernon.
Yeah.
They make everything themselves. It's all natural products. It's awesome. I was using that. I wish I could have
a natural Volterra.
Yeah, essentially. So yeah, just tried to keep myself going that way. And then after tour, I went for a light run the next day. So one of the nights we had to sleep in this rec center on tour, and we played basketball for fun. Like one evening, the gym was open to us, and we were playing a game called Bump.
Yeah,
and I didn't realize how much running would be involved in that. But I haven't. I used to play a bit of soccer, and I've only ridden my bike as far as like, that kind of exercise. I haven't gone for a run since I had surgery or anything. Like I was pretty nervous about my like multi-directional running and, that kind of thing. But playing Bump, I was fine. Like I'm sprinting to get the ball, like just because you have to survive to the next round, Yeah. So all of a sudden I got home from tour. I was like, I should go for a run. I didn't want to go for a bike ride because I needed a break. I didn't want to lift weights the next day because that would probably overload me. But I was like, I'll just try a run. And I went for my first run in like over 2.5 years. And it felt pretty good, like other than, my tight quads. But it was good. So I'm like, I'm going to try to incorporate that now. I'm back to weightlifting.
So I saw that in your Instagram just the other day, and I told you I was going to bring it up on this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
You squatted 145, you said, or 135, sorry. You said that was the first time since cancer that you've squatted that, and you don't have a glute max on is it your left side?
On my right.
On your right side. So how does that work mechanically? Like you obviously still have a glute med and a glute min, and then of course quads, hamstrings, but like is it affecting how your other muscles are engaging or moving or compensating?
Yeah, there is definitely compensation. I feel like my left leg wants to take over. So I'm really, I started light when I started lifting again, just because I wanted to keep balance and not, jump in heavy and overcompensate. So I'm really trying to make sure the load is even between the legs, but on my right leg, it's a lot of other muscles being recruited to compensate, but the range of motion is there. So there's no pain, there's no resistance to the range of motion. Like you saw the squat, it's pretty deep. And there is weakness though, like I can tell, which is why I'm back down to a plate. But
Of course, you got to build that you got to rebuild the whole foundation.
yeah. So I don't. I'm happy that I can do a plate. Like I'm going back to when I used to lift and did 3. I don't have any aspiration of that. I don't think that's going to be a reality. But the fact that I can squat and I can do a plate, I'm super happy. And I'll see safely how far I can go with that. But other areas like deadlifting, I can deadlift way more than I expected. Like I'm getting close. I'm getting close to 3 plates.
No
on
way.
On a deadlift, which I didn't think I'd be able. About a year and a half ago, like I had already recovered from surgery, I tried to deadlift. My wife was working out and she was deadlifting 95 pounds, so the bar in 25s, and I was like, that should be light. I'll see if I can do it. And my right leg, my knee, just like as soon as I put some strength into lift, my right knee caved in, like a full flop
inward
into the middle.
Yeah.
Like it just flopped. Like I was like, ugh. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do this again. So I didn't try until, the past couple months. I started to slowly try some things. Started with just an empty bar and 65, 95, and slowly building it up. But I think for the range of motion in a deadlift, I've got enough. It's enough full body that I can still maybe get some good weight on there.
Yeah,
but
I mean, you just have to change your hinging points a little bit to take a little bit of the pressure off your posterior chain and your glutes and put a little bit more emphasis on the quads. And yeah, so.
But
totally.
it's been fun. No excuse for not lifting upper body in that time. But I mean, like we're talking about with, healthy lifestyle, like a little bit at a time is a better way to sustain these things. And I knew that I was cycling a lot. And I was doing jiu-jitsu, so I wasn't too concerned about weightlifting until now. It feels natural, and it feels like a time where I'm excited about it again. So see where it.
How are you able to manage with your mobility and stabilization, doing jiu-jitsu and rolling with people, being that you're missing that leg strength in that certain range of motion or that certain movement pattern without having your glute?
Yeah, it's limiting in circumstances. Overall, it's not too bad. When it decides to be a limit for me, it always surprises me because it's in a random, like it's such you're in so many different positions that it's hard to like remember where it was that it failed. It happens here and there, but it's pretty rare that it is an issue for me.
So with after going through the whole reset protocol with all the vegetables and getting back into things, what are you eating now? Just curious.
Yeah, so now I still do a big salad in a blender. I try to do it once a day. We grow our own vegetables in the growing season here, so I'm throwing a bunch of those in, and then I use AG1 Athletic Greens. I throw that in, hemp seeds, chia seeds. I'm just looking on my counter. Some matcha powder. What is that one? Amla powder from an amla berry. Amla, yeah. No. It's a berry from India. It's got way more antioxidants than blueberries. Like it's sky high. Yeah, and then but yeah. So I'm still natural foods. Tons of vegetables, a juice occasionally still, but I do eat meats now. I'm pretty aware of what goes into the food cycle in North America. So organic and free range, I try to be picky when I can. You can't always, but I'm just, just like everyone else, doing my best. If money's tight in a payday area, like, we're not getting the high quality that we will when, money's better. But
are you still ordering beef from the farm that you introduced me to before I moved to Mexico?
I haven't for a
Like that?
while. No, I should. I should. Happy Wanderers. They're a great family. Yeah, great family. The Walters. They're awesome. But I was ordering in pretty big quantity before. I'm sure. They do. They deliver and everything too. I'm sure they would. But um, they're mostly cattle. They do have poultry and some other stuff too. But yeah, thanks. I should look into that. But yeah, we've just been going to the stores locally and um, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Meridian Market. How is
Yeah,
their
they're
meat
good.
been good?
Yeah, yeah. Meridian's local. We go to Choices, a place in Abbotsford for
Hmm.
organic produce. They have tons of stuff there. And
Do you guys
but
ever hit
yeah,
up the Saturday farmers markets at what is it, at Centennial or Griner?
we have been, but not a lot of stuff is organic there.
Really, a
Sometimes,
farmers market?
yeah, sometimes. Yeah,
That's so silly.
it's
I
kind of
got
like half and half. Could be
I got
more, but
one time I went there when I was back in the summer. I got like a carton of goose. Or no, they were duck eggs, but they were so big and they were so delicious.
really nice.
They were just like double the size of a normal egg.
Yeah.
All about
Yeah.
it.
So I'm trying to up my protein again now that I'm, since I've been more active. Yeah, making sure I don't get too thin again.
Get your
Put some
keep your
weight back
protein up.
on. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm feeling a good healthy weight, and I'm not trying to be huge, but I'm definitely not trying to get too skinny again. That wasn't fun.
Yeah,
I
it's
was
it's it's funny. I've had like three people in the last like week say like that I look thinner, but then I'm thinking about it. I'm like, hey, I did lose a bit of size with my knee injury. Just it wasn't able to do like heavy deadlifts or heavy squats, and that's a big foundation of strength. But at the same time, like I'm thinking about it, I'm like, what do I do in a week? I go to Muay Thai twice a week, and I play beach volleyball, and those are like my two things that I'm training to be proficient at, training to be as good as possible. And neither of those sports really are beneficial. It's not really benefiting you to be big or bulky
Mhm.
or super strong in a particular movement. Like I need to be agile. I need to be quick. I need to be fast. I need to have foot speed and a vertical, and like I don't need to be big in this season of my life. That could change. Who knows? 6 months from now, I
Yeah,
may just be going to CrossFit, and I might put on some size again. Who knows? I mean, I doubt I'll do CrossFit just because the amount of injury that comes with lifting that way
for speed.
without yeah, for speed and like maxing out your reps. It's just nonsense when you stop and think about it. Doing big compound lifts and do it as fast as you can, as heavy as you can, for as long as you can. It's just no wonder people get injured so much.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fun sport. I did that before I started lifting for strength, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, I'm just trying to be healthy. That's what I'm lifting for, is just to be, strong and healthy, and that's what I'm eating for, and all these other things is just to try to sustain a quality of life that I can be a good dad, good husband, and um,
And
lead my family in health and spiritual life, and
yeah, I love that you're really creating your own culture within your house where you and your kids are doing stuff together. You guys are
mhm,
going on vacations as much as possible and go and chasing experience and chasing health and longevity
mhm,
and all these things and incorporating them into it. And it's so cool to see because so many people use dependence or their family as a crutch of why they can't do certain things or what's preventing them from making some of these choices about their lifestyle and about their health. And so it's very cool to see you leading the charge and being a leader and creating that culture that yeah, I don't have a better word for it, the culture within your own house where we eat this way, we behave this way, we treat each other this way, and we have experiences and grow together. And
mhm.
that's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. It became really clear to me what values mattered when I was, when you face like a potential future without yourself in it. When you look at it that way, like I spent a lot of years chasing money, chasing success in my professions at the expense of my health and family. I spent a lot of time away working, and in school and doing all these things, literally skipping nights of sleep to save money, to invest in real estate or whatever. Like, there's a cost that is much more than dollars when you look at it with a different lens. And I could be happy in any living like I could have a condo and be happy as long as I'm healthy with my family. It's a lot different looking at life now, and what's important than the way I used to perceive things. And I think I wish I could have recognized that sooner, and I like sharing this story because maybe people will see it from my point of view, what it took for me to understand some of these things, and
Absolutely.
maybe not have to go through it the same way.
Yeah, exactly. If you can help people see things through a different lens without having to go through what you went through in order to open your eyes to see through that lens, then that's service.
Yeah, yeah.
That's serving fellow man.
Of course, yeah. I mean, that's one thing that me and my kids always talk about is like, how can we show love to other people and help others and give back? Like
So
that,
cool.
we talk about that often, and yeah, it's cool to be able to do it. So,
Absolutely, man. That's super cool. So, I just want to ask you a question that is something that I try to remember to ask everyone that comes on the podcast. What are your go-to, never miss routines? Whether it's morning, midday, night, any time of day. Like, what are the things that that when you do, you're at your best?
morning, brush my teeth, never miss. Yeah, no, but seriously, eating for me, I need to eat early. If I miss a morning meal, it throws off my entire day. I need to start with a good meal early. And I stop eating early as well. So, early dinner is the better. I need to be off screens early in the evening. I need to tuck my kids in at night. Even though they're getting old, I still need to do that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. I had a conversation with my buddy Nick. I'll put a little link somewhere up to it, but he was diving into a different type of time restricted eating that's more based on your circadian clock. And so that is exactly what you say. It's, getting a meal in earlier. It doesn't have to be first thing in the morning when we wake up, but early enough that it, along with getting your body kickstarted with your metabolism and timing it with the circadian clock and having it so that your body is done digesting by the time it gets dark, which means he's having his last meal when he's on point with his with this routine is at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. That's his last meal. And I'm sure as you've dove down the rabbit hole on sleep and sleep cycles and sleep hygiene, that any energy your body is using for something like digestion, it's not putting towards other things like autophagy and being able to clean out your cells and being able to hit certain REM cycles and all these different things that are contributing to your energy and your life force for the next day. So it sounds like you're on trajectory for that a little bit as well. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's definitely, yeah, that's a high point for me too, is to whatever I can do to improve quality of sleep. So whether it's not digesting, those nights where you watch a movie and eat something really late, you're not having I didn't mention this. I don't know where you're at for time for this, but
I'm golden for time as long as you are.
Okay, there's a couple more things though that were pretty important. Was I've learned through this whole process how important liver health is for detoxifying your body. And when I was diagnosed, actually, ironically, right before I quit drinking, I was still drinking and I just wasn't feeling great. It wasn't, I'd feel gross.
Contributing to your life.
Yeah, and especially since I quit almost full turkey. Like, I think I've had maybe a few drinks over the past 2.5 years for, like, I don't know, with special occasions. But even that, every time I kind of, you know how you can notice these small things now. Like, even having one, I can feel the negative impacts on me. So it's not really even worth it for me anymore to even have one for a special occasion. But basically eliminating alcohol has it just really it doesn't plug up your liver the same. Like, any way for your body to naturally detoxify from the stuff in our environment that you can't help but consume, whether it's through your skin or
Yeah,
through
your
your
liver's a big filter.
digestion. Yeah, it's really important, and it's really important for getting through cancer too, especially when you've got medications and drugs. And, like, even still, I'm going for I have to get blood tests before I have a CT scan because they need to see if my kidney function and liver function is up to par before a CT scan. Like, they're such vital organs that I don't see, for me anyways, and I recommend this for anyone, but for health, like, you got to protect your liver, like, more than anything. Like, it's a really, really, really important thing. And alcohol seems to be one of the last things that people can change because it's so social and it's so ingrained in our society. But
When really
it's
it's like the biggest toxin that we intake.
yeah, one
Like
of the worst things. Yeah,
I
and
know, dude. Yeah,
you can really feel it.
I'm
Like, I
with
can
you.
really, yeah. But so that was a big thing for me that I forgot to mention.
So
The other,
what else
go ahead.
in that liver rabbit hole? What else have you learned about detoxing the liver? Curious.
Milk thistle's good.
Milk thistle.
It's a natural supplement. It helps promote liver health. Um, my naturopath recommended it. I've heard of it before, but I think a lot of gym bros that use steroids use it to protect their liver. But it's a natural supplement that helps. But yeah, the other thing though that I was going to tie in was your body's natural ability to fight sickness, illness, like fevers and stuff, right? Um, I've always I've always grown up thinking I had to bring down a fever, get rid of a fever, take Tylenol, reduce the fever. But I was seeing also another naturopath in Fort Langley named Dr. Gurdev Parmar. He's a naturopath and an oncologist. So he also specializes in cancer and
Interesting.
yeah, he really drove home the point to me to protect my body's ability to have fevers because that's my body fighting off things on its own.
Yeah.
He's like, never suppress a fever.
That's your body's defense mechanism to attack whatever is causing dis-ease in your body, and that's like it burns it. It heats up your body for a reason.
Yeah. So, like, he's like, don't take Tylenol. That's bad for your liver. It can cause Tylenol actually out of all the different like medications like that over the counter things is one of the worst, and it's given like so often. I can't remember off the top of my head the list of things that it can do, but
People take
there's
that
a
shit like candy.
yeah, yeah, and I was too at the beginning, like when before my tumor was removed. Like, there was like I had this schedule of hydromorphone, Tylenol threes.
Oof.
I can't remember what else, but there was like 50 pills a day I was taking for pain, and then the management of those pills for digestion and getting things moving because it backs you up. But yeah, regular bowel movements. It's getting a little gross, but
No,
if
I'm gonna make.
if
I was planning to make a video all about this, and it's like
you
literally,
should,
you need to pay attention to your shit. Plain and
yeah.
simple. Like
So
it's such a big indicator.
yeah, absolutely. The thing is, like, one of the things I learned doing Square One with Chris Wark was that, like, the bowel movement you have today, you might think, oh, I'm regular, I'm going every day, but it actually could be the food from 4 days ago. Like, you're just so backed up that you think you're regular, but it's actually backed up so far a way that you can kind of test how your track is have some beets. It will make your
When
stool,
the red comes through.
it will make it red. Like that's what I noticed with juicing right away is like, oh, it was like actually immediate. So I was like, okay, I'm in a good place. But if I haven't had juice for a while, or if I've kind of fallen off the wagon or whatever, if something's not right in my digestion, and I have some beet juice and it's not there right away, and it's like a day later or 2 days later, I know that it's a very clear indicator for yourself. So that goes back to liver and to digestion and everything, just getting toxins out of your body. Like when your waste is waste, like you got to get it out. So
Yeah, I mean, I can speak for that. For probably 2 years, I didn't have regular bowel movements, and I just ignored it. I was just, I guess you could straight up call it ignorance, because I was ignoring it. And yeah, I thought I was healthy. I was maintaining fitness for sure, but at the same time, I was also eating things that I don't eat anymore, and eating a lot of, like, just because it seemed like the healthier thing, a lot of, not that I wasn't eating meat, but a lot of vegan alternatives and drinking milk alternatives, and all these foods full of shit and gums and preservatives and more seed oils and all these things. And like it took me quite a while once I addressed it and started seeing a naturopath / holistic nutritionist. And the same thing, had to like eliminate a whole bunch of stuff, do a bit of a cleanse, and even then like finding what foods are working for my body and what ones are not. Like, and it's a big path, but once you start to feel good and you feel more optimal, and then you clicks in that this is actually what normal is supposed to feel like. And this is what normal daily bowel movements are supposed to feel like. Like it was weird, because as much as I was embarrassed about it, like, cause I just had the runs like all the time, but I didn't do anything about it. I thought I was being healthy, and I literally ignored it. So yeah, that was a big push down for me, down different rabbit holes of whole picture health and not just physical fitness.
yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot more to health than just like what your body looks like, or it can trick you. You can think you're super healthy, and then something serious comes up. Yeah, I mean, like there's still a couple areas that I want to get into as personal practice. Like I want to get into fasting more. Not like
Fasting's great.
Not intermittent. I don't want to do like I've experimented with intermittent fasting, where it's like, oh, I eat in this 8-hour window, but I want to do like a true like 1 or 2 day every couple of weeks, like full fast. I think from everything that I've learned about it so far, it's so good for your body. But I think if you approach it from a spiritual sense too, it's so good for your mind and for your connection to God, or to whatever it is that you're doing. It's just like all of these pieces, like you were saying before, they all fit together. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think there's intention behind it all. And it's really cool to be a part of it and to see how it's all working together and to experience it. I think it's meant to be experienced. And
yeah, fasting is something that I've dove into in the last 2 years myself as well. And even I've even gone down the hole a little bit with dry fasting. I've got one under my belt so far, but that's nothing.
Whoa.
No water, because your body produces water enough to survive for a period of time. So they're saying that, like, essentially the theory of it, I mean, there's a guy's podcast that's literally called the Dry Fasting Club. And he has like an email list and a podcast. And what he's found is the theory that, if you're not putting food in your stomach to digest, then it has time to enter ketosis, and then it goes into autophagy, and all these different cycles that your body naturally wants to go through to clean out, to get rid of old cells, to, mitochondria that's no longer functioning, just all these things, just cleaning out your house. It's, I believe autophagy, the root to the word, it's like self-eating, to eat itself. And with if you're drinking water and you're drinking electrolytes, your body, as much as it's not having to digest a whole lot, it's still having to move. It's still having to absorb. It's still having to use some energy in that process. So if you eliminate it altogether, they're saying that you can get the same effects of autophagy of a 3-day fast within a 36-hour time window of dry fasting. And so I tried it once. I haven't done it since then, but because the last 2 fasts ago, I did a 3-day fast, and right in the middle of the fast, I threw in a 24-hour dry fast. And it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I didn't have the pasties. I wasn't super thirsty. It was more so like a mental thing more than anything. You just have to really look inward and ask yourself some questions and figure out what your body actually wants. Like, am I actually hungry and thirsty right now? Or do I just think because it's like what I usually do that I should drink water now that I need to do it? But it's not. It teaches you a lot about yourself and about I don't want to say feelings, because it's not necessarily a feeling. It's more so your body's mechanisms, like what is real hunger. Most people will probably go their entire lives without knowing, well, I shouldn't say that. Most people in Western society won't go their entire lives without knowing what true hunger actually means, because going 6 hours after a meal, that feeling that you get in your stomach isn't hunger. That is your body's desire or addiction to being fully satiated, to being like 100% full. Which is why our bodies our bodies are so overwhelmed and so bombarded, and especially when it's not whole foods and we're overeating and all these different things, our body's just constantly working and doesn't get a chance to work on itself. It's spending too much time in the business, not on the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's definitely a mind shift in that regard. I mean, if we want to talk or ask me more questions or talk more about fasting after, we can, because it's definitely been a big eye-opener experience for myself through my health journey and I guess spiritual journey as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's that feeling of like, after 6 hours, like feeling like you need to eat again. Like there's so much too, like about like the standard Western diet that is addiction based. Not just the addiction to feeling satiated, but like actually like the ingredients in our foods that like engineered, drive you to need more. Like I definitely had time in my life where I was fully addicted to junky foods. Like Doritos was a huge one. Like I won't even eat a single one if I'm somewhere, because I know that it just drives me to need the next one and the next one. Like it's really like, it's that tangible or noticeable of a feeling. Or, pizza or fast food. It's so addicting.
Yeah,
like it just drives you. Like I used to, when I was younger, think it was cool to like eat a ton at once. Like I was like, oh, I can eat so much. And if I was at a fast food place, I literally could eat an inhuman amount of food in one sitting and not feel full. I could just keep going and going and going until probably, but if you do that with real food, you're not overeating like that. You just can't.
No.
The food's it's made to be addictive and engineered for you to eat more and need more, because the calories are meaningless. Yeah,
engineered, literally, like you're saying, chemically engineered to bypass your satiety hormone. So like, I always get them mixed up between lectin and ghrelin. Ghrelin is your satiety hormone and lectin is your hunger hormone. But either way, like those foods, like the Lay's, you can't eat just one. Like it's a thing, because they're literally laughing, being like, once these idiots eat one, like they're gonna be hooked and it's gonna drive all the dopamine centers in the brain, and then it's gonna not trigger their satiety hormone, and then they're just never gonna feel full, and they're gonna eat an entire can of Pringles or Lay's or whatever it is. It was Lay's, but you can't have just one, and you're gonna eat the whole bag, and it's coated in seed oils. It's processed shit. There's no real food in it. Like, it's brutal.
Yeah, but
what do you think? What do you think is of the rabbit holes that you've gone through with your whole experience with health and wellness and cancer? What do you think is the biggest lie that is told to people about health, whether it be from media sources or general information, and even GPs?
The biggest lie, I think, is to rely on the medical system.
Damn.
It's it has a purpose. Like it does do some things well. I'm not trying to say that it
Acute care.
doesn't. Yeah, yeah. But there's no prevention. There's no. It's just all like it's patchwork. It's just.
It's and not only is it patchwork, it's profit driven patchwork.
Mhm.
And all the companies that cause the problems that cause us to utilize the healthcare system, they're all the same companies, owned by the same companies, just so they can make more money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's truly that way. Um, yeah. So I think that is the. Yeah. Your question was, what was the biggest lie? Yeah.
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 Well, that's actually that's really cool. I'm like, obviously I'm stoked that we share similar outlooks on all of these things. But when I first reached out to you a couple weeks ago, I asked you for your input because as a cancer survivor and someone who has been through the shit with the medical system, I wanted to get your almost your stamp of approval about a video that I wanted to make, just a single topic. And the topic was, and hopefully I'll probably time it so it comes out around the same time as this video, but it's literally people need to stop saying fuck cancer if they're not willing to say fuck everything else that's in the system that unfortunately is bombarding people and maybe not directly causing cancer, but bombarding our bodies so much that our bodies can no longer defend ourselves and can't sustain the load of toxins in our body, and therefore drives up rate of all these inflammatory diseases, all these chronic diseases, and cancers as well. Like the seed oil industry, the processed sugars, the foods, the pesticides, all these different subtopics that if you're not willing to say fuck those companies, then you don't have a place having a virtuous signal on your back of your car of a bumper sticker that says fuck cancer on the back of it just because you know someone that had cancer and survived from it. It's a terrible thing, but if you can't blame the cancer. The cancer got caused from something. The cancer didn't just come out of nowhere and wreak havoc on your life. It was caused by something, and those are the things that people need to step up and stand against, veto, whatever that looks like, but not participate and not promote them further by giving them your hard-earned multiple times over taxed dollars to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a question that I was asked early on, well, I wasn't asked personally, but I believe it was Chris Swart, going back to Square One, one of his podcasts in the program, or he wanted the listeners to ask themselves, what caused your cancer? And answer that honestly to yourself. You're not talking to anyone else, but what caused your cancer? Now, if I look at my life, we've talked about a number of changes I've made, and I think that they all contributed. I think stress, sleep, food choices, a lifetime of different toxins entering my body. I have a huge list, and I'm not denying those things. But when I was in the doctor's office, talking to my oncologist, he said, "Oh, it's not genetic. It's just, bad luck, or it's just, there's no reason for this. It just happened." I don't accept that. There's a reason. There's a cause to these things. Even genetics, there's you look at, I don't know, everyone knows people who've battled cancer. There's not, if it's genetics, why just a few people and not all of the people in that genetic line? There's many other factors. And when I was asked that question, what caused your cancer? I reflected on everything. I'm not going to just bury my head in the sand and pretend it was just bad luck, and I don't need to take responsibility. I don't need to make change, and the chemo is going to cure me. That is the easy way out of these things.
Ignorance.
And yeah, but it is but it's the society that we're brought up in, and it's the response we're conditioned to have to these things. Currently, I know, at least 6 people in my circle of friends or acquaintances that are close enough to call friends that have cancer, that have been diagnosed since I got cancer only a couple years ago. It is so prevalent, and it is happening more and more, that I think that the environments in which we live are worsening, and I think that the choices that we're making are worsening, and our willingness to pay attention is maybe not all there. So I am, in my personal life, I'm actively trying to reach out to friends in these situations just to talk and share my experience, and hopefully encourage people to make change. It's not too late. You don't have to sit back and shirk responsibility to your doctor and say it's my doctor's responsibility to fix me. You can participate in this and you can make change. And that's kind of like back to the book Radical Remission. It's like, if you want to see radical change in an outcome, you need to make the radical change to get that outcome. And without that, you're really just, it's a hope.
It's irresponsible.
Yeah.
If in life, if you think about it this way, you have kids, you are responsible for making sure they are healthy and good human beings, but who is looking after you? You have the responsibility, and whether you like it or not, or whether you see it a different way, whatever, but you chose to have this body. The body that you have, you chose it. Mm. So why are you treating it like such shit? Why do you neglect it? Why do you knowingly, not always knowingly, because some people are ignorant, but the information is there, putting all this shit into your body when why? Why are you disrespecting the decision that you made by choosing this body and just neglecting it and making it sick and making life harder for yourself? And when I asked you originally the question, do you mind if I pulled it up? Do you mind if I read the answer when I was looking for your approval on whether I was out of line or not for saying what I wanted to say?
Oh, sure. I don't even remember what I said. Yeah.
So you said 100% to all of the above, and I'll add, fuck your own ignorance or lack of effort to make healthier choices and lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this episode to come out along with the other episode that I'm going to make, just the solo one. And I mean, as much as it's going to be polarizing and some people may hate me or shame me or whatever, I don't care. Like, if people want to take what I say, and if one day something that I said sticks and they find truth in it and it's able to curate their own journey or kickstart their own journey and looking into their health from a little bit of a different angle, then I think that's a job well done, a deed served.
Yeah, like it is with something important, like something as important as your health and your longevity. And it's crazy to me how polarizing it can be when it brings in a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings, because everyone thinks that they've got it the right way. And I think it's really important to remember, and for me too, like, to go into it with humility and the willingness to learn. And even as we've talked, like I've shared what I've gone through, my perspectives, my current understanding of things. But as you've seen, like over my story, like my current understanding has been many things. It's changed, it's evolved, and it's grown, and I expect it to continue to do so. But I think it's important to share what we know to be true at the current moment. Because I think you have the same intention as I do, is to help people and to offer something to help people. It's not to judge or shame people. Like when we're throwing out the word ignorant, it's not in a derogatory way. It's in a way, it means you don't know, you're unaware, or it may be intentionally ignoring the truth, but it's like,
It's seeing things, but knowing that it goes against what you believe, and
Yeah.
you're not willing to look internally and challenge what you've identified with, and so you're ignoring it. So it's literally ignorance.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it, anyways.
Yeah, totally. And so my hope is just to be able to put something out there and maybe motivate or encourage people to take action, or to at least start looking like genuinely for themselves. And like, oh man, just saying that, like, look for yourself, like research for yourself. Like there's been, I mean, going through COVID, there was so much backlash against people trying to look into things. I don't want to get into that because that's going to take another couple hours, but
Yeah.
but like there was a lot of backlash against people doing that, like researching for themselves, because you're not a trained doctor. Yeah, but what we're reading are the opinions of trained people and the results or the research of trained people. But
Why aren't we allowed to discuss it?
why can't we talk about it? And why is the position that you hold, from what you've heard from those trained people, better than the people, it's, when I say like go like look into this stuff for yourself, like I mean it genuinely, like explore and see what information is there and that is factual. Like there's a way to read something and find out if it's factual. Like our entire history is built on
His story.
written things documenting the past and documenting everything.
Yeah, the victor of whatever outcome or conflict there may have been, that's history, is his story. It's the guy who won who gets to tell his side of the story of what the truth really was.
Yeah, I mean, look at the people who have survived cancer, like what did they do? They're still here. They didn't only, not all of them, most of them didn't only do the prescribed treatment plan. Most of them have had some other intervention that helped them along the way. And I think if you look at those things or in general health, look at people who are healthy and what are they doing versus the people who just take the medication their doctor says they need for the rest of their lives because of this thing that could be dealt with by a lifestyle change. I just really want to encourage people to attempt to just look into things. I'm not even saying make a change right now, just like, look.
Yeah, imagine. Actually, I forgot to mention this to you, but you're gonna love this. So there's a guy. I feel terrible that I'm blanking on his name. I know the first letter, but that's about it. And he's a Romanian guy, and his kid got diagnosed with cancer at like the age of 13. And instead of doing what they were told to do, they went and moved to the beach in Mexico. So he learned to surf. They integrated into nature and did workouts in the sand and learned how to live off the land and eat all the natural food that is grown in this area and learn to live a different way, and also using different plant medicines as well to help with the cancer. And he ended up beating the cancer, and now he he doesn't have like a public website or anything because otherwise he wouldn't have enough time to do it all, but he's been making cancer protocols and he does like cancer retreats for people that are that want help with managing and getting rid of their cancer. And he is involved in a project in Mexico, and I know a guy that's spearheading this project as well, and they're building a resort in a little fishing town that you can only access by boat. However, the resort is designed as a wellness resort, and they're tailoring it specifically to cancer patients. And the wellness center is being designed by this guy who basically had to turn himself into an expert to help save his kid. And I'm coming on as to help design the fitness facility for it. So I get to have my hand in that project to some extent. And so that's going to be a pretty cool to see how that all plays out, because it's all very integrated into nature and yeah, it's going to be a pretty cool project.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the consulting side of Truth Performance. But everything you were saying, man, about questioning and finding out what works and what doesn't and other people's perspective, that is what the Truth Performance podcast and the whole everything under the Truth Performance umbrella is all about. So thank you for being such a contribution to that in our conversation today.
My pleasure. It's nice talking, man.
We're over 2 hours. This is officially
Crazy.
the longest one yet. And happy as you, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man. That's we're gonna wrap this one up.
Yeah,
been
sure.
Good. And I'm gonna try to take everything that we talked about, every one you referenced and shouted out, and I'll find websites and everything to put in the show notes. There's links so people can look into all
Perfect.
these different people, into all these books that you mentioned about different cancer treatments, natural ways, and all the other people you talked about will all be in the show notes down
Awesome.
below. So, guys, thank you for tuning in today. If you made it this far into the conversation, if you like the content that is going on here, I would appreciate a share, a subscribe, a like, and also if we miss something, if there's things that you want to contribute to this conversation, the comment section is where that conversation is. I would love for it to take place there. So, all right, guys, that is the Truth Performance Podcast for today. Thanks, and see you next time.